Alright, welcome back. So, last time, beginning of last week, we were working on Descartes' rule of signs and figuring out how many total possible positive zeros we have and how many negative zeros we have. And we were looking for the sign changes. So we did remainder theorem followed by looking at how many times the signs change from positive to negative. So trying to determine without actually giving you the numbers for synthetic division, how many solutions we have that are positives, how many that are negatives. So on the back of page 31, so going to 32, we're going to rational zeros now. So when you're doing synthetic division before, every time you do want to say you divide this by this, so you figure out the zero and you divide by synthetic division. So at some point though, we need to just make a list of possibilities for numbers to do synthetic division with, and so we come up with what's called the rational zero test. So every rational zero has a form of p over q, where p is the constant factor, or term a sub 0. So p is factors of the constant, and q, it says, is a factor of the leading coefficient, a sub n. So we need factors. So we need numbers that multiply to these particular numbers. And initially what we're going to do is just make a list of possibilities, because you don't want every possible number there is in existence. We just want to narrow it down to our particular problem. Alright, so looking at example 2, list all the possible rational zeros of this function. So the number here that is the constant, the number by itself, is p. The leading coefficient is always in front of the degree term, so this is q. Now, so we're looking for numbers. I'm not going to divide the 1 over 1 to get 1. What I'm looking for is a list of possibilities for p and a list of possibilities for q. So we want numbers like you used to do the factor tree. So if you made it 8, you would simplify it down to, two numbers to multiply 8. So 1 and 8, 2 and 4. For 1, all we have to do is, for p, the factors that make 1 is a 1. Now what we have to consider though is that we have positive and negative numbers are factors of a positive 1. Same thing here, the q. Factors of a positive 1 in the denominator is a plus or a minus 1. So what happens is, why it has another equal sign, is you need to make a list of all the possibilities. So take the top number and divide by every single bottom number. So our list initially here is nice because we just take the 1 and divide by 1. So we get 1 again. And the positives and negatives, because if I do every possible combination, I will always end up with a plus or a minus, so a positive 1 or a negative 1. So this first one's nice and easy. That's not a problem. The thing comes if it's, we have numbers other than 1. Sometimes our list will be bigger. So look at the possibles. So in example 3, list the possible zeros of 10x cubed minus 15x squared minus 16x plus 2. The constant by itself is p. The leading coefficient is q. So our numbers we're looking for that are factors of p are 2, and the numbers we're looking for factors of q is 10. So we're not trying to reduce 2 over 10, so don't reduce it. What you're doing, so a little bit more detailed out, so we're looking for factors of 2. So 1 and 2 multiply to give me a 2. So these are factors. You're looking for the combinations. This times this gives me that. For 10, we have a little bit more. We have a 1 and a 10. So I'm just kind of pairing them together. If you want to write them in order, numerical order, feel free, but you don't have to. And the next we'll pair, there's also other numbers to multiply to a 10, other factors of 2 and 5. So now the next thing is to to divide every single top by every single bottom. So it's just really going through and doing them in a pattern. So you do 1 over 1, which is 1. But we always put plus or minus with them. Now this 1 over the 10. So plus or minus 1 over 10. 1 over the 2, plus or minus 1/2. 1 over 5, so plus or minus 1/5. Now that we took care of the 1, we did everything over that. So now I do the 2 over everything. So really all you're doing right now is making a list. You're not having to work with them, just getting a list, get used to making these things. So 2 over 1, so that'd be plus or minus 2. 2 divided by 1. 2 over 10, well, that actually reduces to 1/5, which we already have, so we don't need to list it again. 2 over 2, which would come out to be a 1, well, we have that. So you don't need to repeat numbers, and then 2 over 5, so plus or minus 2/5. Okay, so this is the possible list. You don't have to work with all of them, you're just making the list. Alright, so if you think you got it, pause it, try number 4. If you want to watch another one and then pause for the last one, that's fine. So in this one, the constant by itself is positive 3. The coefficient here is 2. So I have numbers that multiply to 3 and numbers that multiply to a 2. Plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3. And plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2. Okay, and then you just do every combination of the top and over the bottom. 1 over 1, 1. 1 over 2, 1/2. 3 over 1, 3. 3 over 2, 3/2. There's your list. Same thing with number 5. Now it doesn't matter if it's a positive or negative, you still do the same exact way as you would the other one. So the P constant is 6, or negative 6, sorry. Q is a 1. Okay, so factors that divide into or multiply to a 6, negatives or positive, is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3. Now the nicest thing is when the 1 is on the bottom, because you have plus or minus 1 and that's it. And now when you divide them all by 1, you have everything that's just on the top. So 1 over 1, 1, 6 over 1, 6, 2 over 1, 2, and 3 over 1, 3. Alright, so that's where I'm going to stop on the instructions. Don't worry about doing this in the bottom. For those of you who are blended, do the work through the half sheet, or the document that I posted where you're actually kind of putting this together. You're doing the number of sign changes for Descartes' rule of signs, and you're doing P over Q. It's just 2 quick problems. If you're in class, make sure you get one of those from me. So your homework for Tuesday is going to be on page 34. It's numbers 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now in 15 and 16, don't do the bottom one, or don't do this part. So stop. So most of them are doing the P's over the Q's. Make a list. Don't just write them as fractions. Make a list. And then down here for 15 and 16, with these problems, do Descartes' sign changes. So just a little bit of practice, because we are going to be combining those tomorrow.